Welcome to Music Crush, a new music podcast hosted by Flute New Music Consortium. I'm Elizabeth Robinson.
And I'm Nicole Reiner. If you like the show, please rate and review it on the platforms wherever you listen to podcasts, particularly on Apple Podcasts. It really helps people find us and grow the show. And of course, you can learn more about Flute New Music Consortium at flutenewmusicconsortium.com. Composer-pianist Carter Pann has written for and worked with musicians around the world, with performances by the London Symphony and City of Birmingham Symphony, the Tchaikovsky Symphony in Moscow, many radio symphonies around Europe, the Seattle Symphony, National Repertory Orchestra, the youth orchestras of New York and Chicago, and countless wind ensembles. He has worked with Richard Stoltzman, the Antares Ensemble, the Capitol Saxophone Quartet, the West Coast Wind Quintet, River Oaks Chamber Ensemble, Takash Quartet, and many concert pianists. Awards include a Charles Ives Fellowship, a Master Prize seat in London, and 5 ASCAP awards over the years. His numerous albums encompass solo, vocal, chamber, orchestral, and wind ensemble music. Pann was a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize in Music in 2016. He loves a good game of chess or poker with his students and friends, and currently teaches and conducts the Boulder Altitude Directive Contemporary Music Ensemble at the University of Colorado in Boulder. We got to know Carter when he wrote our 2017 Consortium Commission piece for flute and piano, Giantess. Welcome to Music Crush, Carter.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here with you both.
For listeners not yet familiar with Giantess, can you talk us through the piece?
Sure. Giantess is a piece kind of like none other from in my output. So Giantess is about an 8 or 9 minute feature length piece for flute and piano commissioned by Flute New Music Consortium back in not too long ago, maybe 16, I think. It was 15, 16. And it's funny, I don't think that's that long ago. For some people, that's like a decade ago. And was written for a consortium of flutists, including both of you. And it was a real honor for me to get this commission because, as I said, I don't have anything quite like this instrument and piano that is not either a full-blown sonata or just a little truffle for like a miniature for a concert. And so this was something that really stretched me. And the piece is called Giantess because I think from front to back, these 8 or 9 minutes, they're a real stretch. I want to say not stretch, but a real, I don't know, it sort of bursts at the seams. The piano part, the flute part is kind of really exploring all of its range. The pianist, and I've had to actually play the part of the pianist for this piece, is very challenging, robust. I mean, these are words you can find in the program notes for this piece in the publication, and there's a reason. I realized when I was writing this piece that I would probably at some point have to be sitting at the instrument to either perform it or record it, and got that sort of felt that trepidation midstream, and I wasn't going to change anything, and sort of I wasn't going to distill it or dumb it down or anything like that. And I was just like I was in for the ride, and boy, was it a challenge. I mean, this piece is really a test for the musicians. You got to want to do this. You got to want to love this and do this. And I bring up there's an expression I've been bringing up to my composition students lately, where I say to them, look, if you're going to go that far with something, or you're going to go that far down the road of whatever quality you're trying to get across, or you're going to walk up to the bell, you just ring it. Don't just walk up to the bell and then avert it or back away from it. You just got to ring that bell. And I think for me, Giantess was that. It's dedicated to there is a dedication to my wife, Heidi Ames, who's also a musician. Not a flutist, but a pianist and a vocalist. And she is, I mean, I don't know, I don't want to sound too cheesy, but she kind of is my giantess. And so it works in 2 ways. The way the music sounds, it sounds like you've got this mega flute in your hands, and the pianist it's like almost like a piano concerto with flute concerto combined, and also dedicated to her.
I love that phrase, bursting at the seams. I think that is really evocative of how it sounds right off the bat. And
and I know you've played it. I've seen that performance.
Yeah, it was great
video,
fun.
marvelous.
if you like playing in a muscular and just athletic way, which I do, it's extremely satisfying. Yeah. I think I remember pairing that. I played that with my colleague Chi Chen Wu, and we paired it with the Prokofiev.
Oh,
And
wow.
afterwards I was very tired, but it was a great pairing. It was a similar kind of playing, if people are looking for something new in that vein.
Cool. Yeah. And I love that Prokofiev. I mean, that's a heck of a concert right
Yeah,
there. I'd love to.
yeah.
Yeah.
Plenty of high D's between the two of you. You referenced this, and I'm always curious to talk to composers about the double life that you lead if you are also still performing. So you perform piano at an extremely high level on your own pieces. Jenny O. Brown's album is a case in point, which has Giantess and other works by you on it. What is that experience like for you, switching from composer brain to performer brain, or is that a thing?
Yeah, no, that very much is a thing. It's funny. One of my mentors, I mean, I had a few that were made wonderful marks on me, and one of them was Bill Bolcom, and he was that, and Bill Albright. They were both performers and prolific composers, and Bill Bolcom would always complain to me about his sort of, he's getting up in years. He was in his 60s, 70s, and he still had to play and record, music from the piano, and would show me his hands and look at this, this tendonitis. He couldn't bend this one finger that well anymore. I mean, obviously he was getting up in years, but I wonder if I'm just headed right into that, where it's just like at some point, this finger, this digit, one at a time, just starts to go slowly, and I can't do it. But I have to put on a different hat for both of the things you mentioned. It could be a composer and a pianist, a performer. I'm doing less performing these days. I mean, it's just the way it is. It could have something to do with where I live. I live in a very rural setting, about 35 minutes away from the College of Music where I teach at CU Boulder. So when you live 35 minutes away, up in altitude, and kind of basically in the forest with the composition studio, and getting to the College of Music, getting to where I work. When I'm there to teach. I'm not there to sort of do 10 rehearsals with my colleagues. It just, it used to be a little bit like that. It's not really like that anymore. I still like to play, but what I like to play now is really what I want to play. I mean, I had a great time recording Giantess with Jenny O. Brown, who is a monster flutist and just so enthusiastic about everything she does. Is really inspiring. And then, the other pieces on the album. But since that recording, I think I maybe have done real, two performances that I can hang my hat on and be proud of. I'm kind of what you would call a utilitarian performer. I mean, I'm there to do, I love the Prokofiev you mentioned, that flute. So I think that's the best piece for flute and piano I think there is. I love to play that, but I mean, I haven't done that in a while. I mean, I just need the opportunity. I need people. I need to be in the road, passing by these opportunities for them to happen. Otherwise, I am a composer through and through, and sort of living in my head 24/7. It's real indulgent. Out in the little studio, it's a barn I remodeled. Gosh, it took like 4 years to take a 4-pole barn and remodel it to be a music studio, a composer studio, not a recording studio. And it's about 80 or 90 yards from my house, which, believe it or not, is just enough distance to get away from the house. And there's a grand piano in there. There's two electric pianos in there. So I guess I get my satisfaction out of writing the music now in a tactile way with all those keyboards, instead of performing with Nicole or Elizabeth on stage, which would raise my blood pressure to play any of the things that you guys are playing these days.
But then you conduct also.
Yeah, I do. It's a group that I started conducting 7 years ago at CU Boulder. It's the new music contemporary ensemble that we call Boulder Altitude Directive. Or BAD, Bad Ensemble.
Cool.
It's really cool. It's a Pierrot ensemble, like Schoenberg's Pierrot, but add percussion to it, and that is who we are. And I get to do 2 or 3 premieres. It's not it's not an every semester thing it used to be, but now it's just 2 or 3 student premieres and then maybe play at a venue outside of the college, a museum with an auditorium or something like that. And we do recordings. We record all the premieres, and it's wonderful. I mean, I really get to learn who my students are when they have to sort of serve up a piece, a brand new piece off the stove and do it for the best players in that building. And they get paid. It's a paid ensemble. It's not part of the curriculum. It's kind of off curriculum professional development for these players.
What about for you? Has conducting added any new perspective, a new way of a new angle of getting at the music on top of
Yes.
having been a performer and being a composer?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think I have an interesting inroad into the mind of, because I am not a talented conductor. I am again a sort of utilitarian conductor, and I do my best. And it's not really about me up there. It's about actually just bringing the expression of these pieces out. But for me, I've had a sort of inroad into knowing the sort of mentality or the relationship a conductor has to a new piece of music, in how much it's studied, how much it's not studied, how clear you want your scores to be, or what a living composer today puts in his or her score that maybe doesn't need to be there, and then it gets transferred into the parts, and then these individual players have to wrestle a concept down or read 5 paragraphs ahead of time and to figure something out. It's a great way to figure out a distillation for your own music. I mean, for my music, I'm saying it's been a great learning experience for me as a composer. I mean, when you're on the podium rehearsing, the most important, I mean, obviously you want to be clear and not rambling a little bit like I'm doing now. You want to get right to the heart of the matter. And if the music, the composer's music in front of you gets right to the matter, graphically or in its notation for these players, I mean, that is a kind of a wonderful marriage right there, from conductor, rehearser, and what the players are looking at. When I'm composing, there's many instances where I actually go back frequently during the composition process, not go back in time, and I don't comb over the whole thing 50 times during the process, but I will go back and I'll see, this is a little confusing to me. If it's confusing to me, it's going to be confusing to you, and because you're not in my head, you don't know what I'm trying to get across. Can the meter here be much more? I don't want to say simple, but it's just a little bit more eloquently presented. I mean, can these meters and the coming to the fermata or all this kind of stuff? I mean, it's been a real laboratory of clarity for me. Get it clear and to present it clearly, because over the years, way before I was ever on a podium conducting players, I was in rehearsals and going, wow, I had no idea that would be so confusing. It's so clear to me. Why is that so confusing? Why does that stop a rehearsal with an orchestra for 30 full seconds? And I have to explain something I thought was really good. You know what? It wasn't that clear. You're laying all your cards on the table, and way back years ago, I would lay, out of all the 52 cards, I'd lay 18 out, and I'd go, you know what? Everybody understands all those other cards. I mean, they get it, they know it. Well, maybe they don't know it. Also, I'm not quite as poetic as I used to be. I mean, when you look at Giantess, I think Giantess is still one of those new pieces where I kind of took what I've learned and put it into the piece, but I used to be really sort of gilded, I want to say, in the words I would use and all the interpretive signals I would give to a conductor on the top of a score, across page after page after page, across the top. And now it's really just, okay, she wants to know the tempo. She wants to know if she needs to slow down here. You know what I mean? And that makes sense to me. It really makes sense to me. I mean, you want the poetry or the whatever, the artistry to come out of the finished product, and you kind of know that you want it to be a real wave that the players can surf during the 1 hour they will have before they perform it. I'll just end by saying this is not something that has jaded me at all. It's actually something that I really appreciate. I just got to cut right to the chase in phrasing, in everything, in dynamics. I mean, if I know that you guys as flutists are not going to be heard, at this climax, everybody's got to come down. You guys have to be way higher than everybody else, and your dynamic has to be 2Fs. And I can't dip you down into the staff unless you absolutely have to be down there during during a major moment in an orchestral work or a band piece to be doubling everybody else. You know what I'm saying? Because I want you as part of a timbre. I don't necessarily need to hear you as a soloist. I've never really phonated all of those words, but that's how I feel.
So it sounds like you're rethinking your approach to artistry and what you're communicating, but I'm hearing some changes to how you're thinking about orchestration also. Is that accurate to say?
You're correct, but that doesn't come so much from me conducting this group of 6 players. It comes from years of minor little cuts, abrasions, and burns from rehearsals where, someone will just barrel through a thin double bar line in my music where it's like it feels like a dagger was just impaled on my leg. And then it's my fault because okay, I didn't really indicate that, that they should take a caesura or something like that, make a pause. So it just has cleared me up a little bit. You have to understand too, as a composer, you need 10,000 hours of putting your eyes on other people's music. I mean, I mean old and dead music. I don't mean just like the 21st century stuff. I mean like centuries worth of things. And I've done a lot of that. I have more of that to do. I have so many holes. I continue to look at music and see what's come to us, from let's say 90 150 years ago. I mean, if you see what has remained and what you two are playing, or what still gets played in the halls and operas and stuff like that, and ballets, you go, okay, that there's something there. What is there? Why is this so beloved? Oh my gosh, you'd be surprised how much old and dead music I traffic in. I just traffic in all that stuff. It's almost like looking at the master, like chess games from 200 years ago and studying those things, or at least, being aware of them. And you really can get a lot from that stuff.
Yeah, well, where are we without our history, right? I mean, you're left reinventing things that don't need to be reinvented if you don't also study history.
You kind of queued me up for a question I wanted to ask a couple of minutes ago, but I didn't want to interrupt your train of thought. I've been listening to our recent podcast episodes as they've aired, and I'm remembering the brief over the summer obsession I had with Perot Ensemble. Since you're living and interacting pretty regularly with a Perot Ensemble, what are some of your favorite pieces for that setup?
So when I started this group, I did look at a lot of specifically Pierrot 5 or 6 member groups. And one of them I think is just fabulous is by Fred Laerdal, and it's called Fantasy Etudes. And not to be mistaken with John Corigliano's piano solo called Fantasy Etudes. This is Fred Laerdal, who actually I think is still teaching at Columbia, and he must be in his 70s. He's a theory teacher, but he's a marvelous composer. And then work by Scott Lindroth called Stomp, which is early in his output. He used to be a Duke, marvelous composer. Schoenberg, Pierrot Lunaire, when you hear that, the Sprechstimme magnum opus, you're kind of blown over, and I think in a good way. It's tough to take the whole thing in. It's a little tough to take the whole thing in. Have either of you had the chance to play that? And I mean, if you play that, that means that you've got a vocalist who's all about it. They have to be all bought in, and that alone is impressive. There are other pieces absolutely a fan of that aren't quite exactly Pierrot, but they're close. And one is the Quartet for the End of Time. Now, unfortunately, there's no flute in that. That piece just takes me and wrestles me to the ground. It's so good. And again, it's a little bit old and back there. But Elizabeth, this is not the question you asked. But I mean, another piece that's close to Pierrot, but it's not. It's an octet. It's Stravinsky's octet. I would listen to that 100 times before I listen to The Soldier's Tale again. I actually like the octet. I just lean that way. Actually, I could tell you a couple of my students in the last 9 years have written extraordinary works for this group. They've moved on, they've gotten their degrees and moved on. The repertoire we do runs sort of hot and cold, but it's all student repertoire. I'm not playing Steve Reich. I'm not playing. It's real student repertoire for recording. Although my first conducting gig at CU Boulder was not this group. It was Steve Reich's double sextet. The thing that I think he won the Pulitzer for that, Steve Reich, back in like 2007 or 2009. And that was when Gary Lewis, our orchestral director here, said, "You want to do the chamber orchestra concert?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'll do it. Great. Let's do Steve Reich because he's a favorite of mine." I kind of like that. But also, Elizabeth, I listen to so much classic rock. I'm a classic rock commuter. What I mean by classic rock is literally like a 20-year period of maybe what I would call radio music back in the late 60s to the 80s. I mean, the 70s, if I could just reimagine myself, it would be great to just be in my 20s in the 70s, and I wasn't. So
Oh,
dusty. It's so
wah,
dusty, but
wah. Let's get into your teaching a little bit more. You've been referencing your work at CU Boulder. You've been there for quite some time now. And one of your former students, Diana Link, just won FNMC's composition competition in the flute piano category for 2023 with Old as Time. So congratulations on that. I'm thinking about this all the time. I think we all are. I'm curious what your pedagogical philosophy is right now. Right now, as academia is, I think, struggling to remain relevant in young people's lives. And then also we are teaching this thing that seems so ancient and so slow moving and so demanding of students. Has that altered your pedagogical philosophy in recent years, and how so?
yeah, that's a wonderful question. It's very, very relevant to today. I started at CU Boulder in 2005, and yes, it was still, I mean, when I think back to that time, it was very like just past this sort of real old guard composite for teaching composition. You would look backwards a lot and see what was done, and you have your pedagogy modeled after somebody or after a certain practice or something like that. Today, it's very different, and we have actually just I've sort of remodeled our recruitment. Students coming up, if they love music and they're like, okay, in high school, some point in high school, they go, okay, I do want to study music formally at a college. I want to go for a university degree. B, I want to do it in music. And they're not really thinking, well, I wonder how viable I'll be. I mean, they're 16, 17. I mean, they're kind of just living in a passion fantasy, which is great, or at least that's how I was in middle school, high school. They're coming at this decision to do this and go further with this and go into something very specific like a fine art like music. And they're coming at it from like every spoke of the wheel you can imagine. They're not coming at it from these three spokes where, oh, okay, these kids are okay. Obviously, they know everything about music history. They write with a pencil. This is what they've been doing. They know the composers. They know that. No, actually, they don't, and it's great that they don't, because then I get to see all these spokes coming in from all these different angles of where they're coming from and what they know, what they don't know, and to be honest with you, 99% of the time, what they don't know is not a problem. It doesn't become a problem. It's when it's like, okay, you've made the decision. I'm honored to teach you, and you don't sound like me at all. You don't, maybe you don't know this, don't know that, but you know what? We'll get there, and maybe you don't even need to know it because the landscape beyond your degree it's just different. It's just that the topography is so different now than it was even 20, 15 years ago. The desire to actually meet and teach these young people as the aperture has widened. I think that's the greatest difference, or that's the clearest difference. To answer your question, my aperture for teaching students has widened, and also the philosophy I have when we're down on the ground when the rubber hits the road is really just teach as a model. Obviously, I'm early 50s, and I'm not going to be a model for somebody who's 18. I'm not in their generation. We have very, very different sort of upbringings and values to a degree. But what I can be is a model teacher so that they see that what I do and what I've been doing. When did Carter start his career? When, let's look back at his music. Oh, I like to make my students who are studying composition a bit uncomfortable with themselves. If they're just a bit uncomfortable with themselves, then they actually start to forge something they didn't know they could break through, or they didn't know this trail was there for them to forge. Or it's nice and cozy to be safe when you're young, but if somebody doesn't challenge that and go, I just recently said to a student, and I've only known her for about a year. I said, all the music of yours that I've heard, and this is true, all the music you've written has been pretty, been very pretty. And that's not a bad thing because I love pretty music. And I just let it dot, dot, dot. I mean, I didn't even tell her what I was thinking beyond that because I knew she would complete the sentence or the thought. And she did. And so I said, okay, it's time for you to actually move yourself and get a little bit close to the furnace. Just in the next thing you're doing, just get a little close to that furnace. I'm not saying burn yourself. I'm just get up there and then discover how when you are not so pretty in your music, it's going to actually pay off to get back to it. That's nothing. That's not a comment that's going to change the world in any way. But it's for her. I think she needed to hear it.
I think that's a great sentiment. Are you familiar with the comedian Rainn Wilson? He played Dwight on The Office.
Oh, of course.
I heard an interview with him recently, and he was saying, "Oh, I feel sorry for young people today because everything seems to be so curated by the time they get to college." And he said, "Man, you know, when I was in my late teens and 20s, that was just for like fucking up and trying stuff and screwing up and then learning from it." Yeah, his idea of the undergraduate degree was, yes, you're trying to make something of yourself, but you have permission to just try stuff that maybe you won't do for the rest of your life. And I feel this too with my students, you know, that it is a little bit, you haven't said this, but I'm about to ask. For me, I find I started at UW in 06, very similar time to you. And I find lately it's harder to get my very kind, very well-meaning students to move closer to the furnace because it's so scary. What if it doesn't come out perfectly? Do you find that you get more pushback than you used to from encouraging them to stretch and grow?
Yes, it's tough. I mean, not just talking about young students who are trying to write music getting closer to the furnace. I'm talking about like even some of the students in the class I teach. I teach a class on Bach counterpoint, and
Mm.
I love this class. I mean, I love this class so much that I'm willing to teach it every fall semester over and over and over again. And, you know, as the years roll by, here it is again. Here it is again. I'm teaching this class, but I love it. But these students who come into me, these are flute students, oboe students, music theater students, anything. They're all about the same age. And yes, I'd like to get them to move to the furnace in that class and consider it a laboratory. I mean, this whole degree should be a laboratory, especially
Yes.
these classes. I have switched. This is funny. This is a concurrent thing with what we're talking about, but I have switched to grading that course. And I have between 20 and 30 students each fall in that course. Everybody's going to get an A, but you have to show me that you're actually making the effort and you need to show up. You need to show up for class and you need to make the effort on all these projects I'm giving you to turn you all into composers, which is what I do in that class. And you're all going to get a good grade. And all I'm asking for you to do is just try. Just try your hand at it. You're not going to be all, Bachs and Mozarts. Some of you are going to have a real struggle, but don't worry if you don't complete every assignment 100%. There's so much work. Just show me that you're making, you're taking a swing at it. But that's just my class. I think it's the same with my students. I want them to fall on their butts, and it's really hard for them to want to take a shot at that. They want to sort of stay safe. But some of them don't. This is not everybody. Some of them really want to, jump into that ice water and see what it feels like. They really do. And those are some of my favorite sort of private sessions and students.
Also, in the vein of advice for young composers, for young students, and maybe also thinking about that curation that has become so natural for people. Your website is a masterclass in simplicity. It's a short bio, a headshot, a link to your works over at your publisher, Theodore Presser. Done. It's beautiful.
You know what? I'll tell you what my publisher thinks about that website.
Okay, yeah, maybe that'll get built into this.
Mhm.
So I look at that and I wonder what, and I also teach entrepreneurship classes on top of, flute and chamber music at University of Wyoming. And so this is always kind of in my head, looking for great examples that are succinct. What are your thoughts on the business of self-promotion in classical music? It's really coming to the fore in their educations. And what What advice do you give your young composer mentees on this subject?
I think it's a matter of taste and touch with everybody and their relationship to social media and I include like YouTube in that, and how prolifically or not they want to curate their career at that age and actually program themselves at that young age to continue to curate their career be in for the years ahead. So when you say that my website is a master class in like it's almost Spartan, that's my taste and touch right there. And you know what I'm saying when I say touch. And it infuriates my publisher because they want me to be much, much more self-promoting and all that. And I'm on YouTube and Spotify and all those, it's SoundCloud and all that stuff. But I'm not what you would call a pusher. I'm not a mover and a shaker. And I'm really jealous of those people. I really am. I just don't have it. I just don't have it in me. I think it could be because I spent so much of my life in music before I had a computer. I made that transition, but then it really did become like Instagram, music influencing, or just really self-promoting and stuff. And I don't think I like this quality in people when I am face to face with them. If I sense it face to face, they generally don't become longtime friends. They become maybe acquaintances or cordial or whatever, but I'm still jealous of them because of what they do. Like I'm jealous of Jenny O. Jenny O Brown is talk about a marvelous careerist. I mean, not only is she a marvelous flute player, but she's a real careerist. I just don't have that. What's great about Jenny is that she also doesn't emit it. I think she saves that for at the time she needs to spend that energy. My publisher would love for me to put all my events on that splash page of that website. Here are the next 10 events, or here are the next whatever. And I'm like, who's going to look at that? I mean, really, who's going to look at that? And I'm not on Facebook. I'm off social media. So Nicole, your question about entrepreneurship to my students is like, I really do encourage them, but they're already all on it. They're kind of all on Instagram. Many of them are on TikTok. Some of them actually disparage the social media necessity and platforms. I mean, believe it or not, I've got a 19-year-old student, and he's just like, I wish it would just all go away. Like there are other ways to do this than just simply splashing yourself all over YouTube or I don't even know if Facebook is a thing anymore for kids in their teens. I got off all of that in 2015, just before I started writing Giantess, because I just couldn't stand how much time a week I was spending looking at my own posts, realizing that I've got something like 4,000 friends and none of them are on my feed. And I did that. And so that's because it's not that I don't like my friends, it's because I just don't want to see them promote something or there's a little too much FOMO, and there was a little too much, I have an ego and all this kind of stuff. It's like a brew. It's like a brew of stuff, and it's either gonna expel you or you're gonna just kind of dance in it. Talk about social media. I could do a whole podcast on that.
I think that could be another episode.
Yeah,
it would be filed in the crusty old man basket. Like this would be for the archives.
Oh, what an attractive sounding name for a basket. Yeah, it does tend to. It feels like it tutors in a certain kind of narcissism that is hard to shut off. Yeah, I think I get what you mean. You can see people using, kind of weaponizing social media to great effect, but you might not want them to come over to your house for dinner for a couple hours.
A little bit like that. Also, and just a real quick thought about this: the line between real life and website life blurs at one point, where you start to believe that your avatar on all the social media sites is kind of really you, and that's who you are because you're pushing that out there, and you forget that what you're doing is you're just sort of you're on a website. You just kind of forget. I mean, you kind of forget IRL for a while when you're kind of screening all the time and making you sort of get what I'm saying. Maybe there is no line there, and maybe it really is you, but I kind of kind of need the line.
What's the biggest challenge you're facing in your work right now?
COVID just threw up, I want to say, sort of or like ripples in a lake or an ocean, in a lake that are just really, really consequential in the teaching aspect, but also in my career. I mean, we all went through 2.5 years of Zoom teaching, Zoom performing. I don't know, did you have to do that? I mean,
The worst.
yeah,
I hated it.
right.
I did it because I was afraid of losing relevance. And so I got so burned out doing guest teaching and performing on Zoom because I thought, how do I answer the question, what have you been doing, when the pandemic's over? And I just hated it.
Yeah, I think it just flattened all of us, and it made us understand. It came right to the fore that what we do, I mean, I'm talking about the three of us and our colleagues, what we do requires in-person relationships, and it requires people in seats, and it requires audiences. So there's that challenge. I mean, COVID sort of was like a etch-a-sketch, if you know what I mean. It just shook it, and now it's blank. And so we're all kind of just starting again and drawing, our lines and who we are, and coming back to it.
Right.
The other thing, I'm gonna tread lightly into the weeds here, into maybe some brambles, by saying that there's been a real challenge for me because I have a wonderful job that I'm honored to be in, and never ever take for granted what I do and how often I have to do it or how often I don't have to do it, the schedule and all that. And I'm a straight white male in this job. And I'm in my 50s, and to a lot of people in their teens and 20s, I might as well be a boomer. There's a lot of something that's going around that wasn't here 10 years ago. And it has to do with the politics of identity. I've had to sort of square with it a little bit. And I'm privileged because I just described my demographic and who I am. And so I'm way privileged in that regard. But I find that there is someone's identity is pervading their artistic endeavors to a degree I just am not used to seeing. So when I am pursuing something I want to artistically, I'm kind of looking out at the world. I'm used to looking out at the world, seeing what it is, and sort of commenting on my observations or looking back in history, or that, whatever. That also leads me to the books I read and the movies I see. The challenge for me is to be the age I am, the demographic I am, and to see that a lot of young art is maybe not so much looking out, but maybe just looking in and projecting identity, or just simply projecting thoughts and feelings, and which are completely legitimate. I mean, they're all over artistic endeavor. But for me, it's very different, and it's a challenge. I mean, it's kind of a cool challenge, but it's something that I'm a little out of step with, because it's just not who I am as a practicing musician.
Absolutely. My only difference is gender. And so that kind of puts me now a little bit one foot in either world. I think I'm definitely more on the privileged side still, but I want to embrace it, and I want to encourage people. And I'm happy to see my students, caring about. I think, how do I say it? I think that with this politics of identity, as you've described it, can also, it is inward looking, but I think it can also help our students see that the person next to them has that going on for them too. And as everyone expresses their own, it's a way of sharing and understanding each other a little bit. So I think that there is a hopeful side to this that can be healthy. But yeah, it is a little bit inside out from the way I was trained to think of myself as an artist, where it's, as a performer, I am a vehicle first for the music that was written, and then maybe I try to put a little Nicole flavor in it, to make it not just the 15,000th version of the Poulenc Sonata or something like that.
Yeah. I was comfortable enough to bring this up, and I thank you both for being who you are, because it's not the easiest as a conversation. But I will mention also that it comes down to curiosity. I mean, if I've got a student or whoever, a friend, who's just not really showing very much curiosity about the world around them, it's tough. It's just
Yeah.
tough for me. And I think it comes out most boldly that actually presents itself to me most clearly in a very young student in a fine arts degree where he or she or they are writing music, and piece after piece after piece, expression after expression is about who they are. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And there's nothing um, cheap about that. I'm not saying that at all. I'm actually just saying that it sort of betrays a sort of an ennui or a disinterest in the world around them, which I find perpetually interesting. And so there's a disconnect there, and I have to bridge that, and in a completely respectful way, because actually I don't think it's cheap. I don't think it's a cop out. I think it's just maybe it's time and place. They're 18, 19, 20, 21, and they're figuring out who they are. And a
Sure.
lot of the time that's the situation because they're just out of high school, and maybe in high school where they went or what they did is not the most conducive to really figuring out who they are. And so when they get to university, they're doing it. They're just going to figure out who they are, and all their artistic expression, and it's a lot of expression, has to do with them. And they're working out of that, which is the opposite of something cheap. I think it's actually formative. But as I say, it's just a little bit of a challenge because I want them to be curious about other things too.
I'd love to ask you about some other things that inspire you, especially anything non-musical.
I think wide open spaces. There's a reason I live in Colorado. I mean, I'm fortunate enough to land at CU Boulder, but Boulder is Boulder, and you both know it.
Yeah.
But if you just get out and go to Wyoming or go up north or the dunes, anything, I love wide open spaces. I mean, an ocean too, a lake. Foreign film. I like when a film, if I'm going to watch a movie, subtitles don't bother me in the least. I want to be able to be taken and transported somewhere else, and it can be in time or place. I love historical documentary. It was simply historical fiction. Still reading paper books. Great. I don't have a Kindle. I don't have a tablet. I have a nice iPhone I could read, but that's not how I want to do it. But I get most inspired. That's a great question, Nicole. I get most inspired by seeing other people do their thing really, really well and know that they're passionate about it. Also, young people who surprise me, and that happens more often than not. Can I ask you that question?
Come on
Oh, I
now.
know that's not how
Um,
this goes. I know that.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
not how it has gone, but it could.
Yeah, well, and both of us, I suppose, could answer. I resonated with a lot of what you said. I wondered if you has wide open spaces always been on that list, or is it more influence from being out here? Because I feel that way now too, but having grown up in the Chicago suburbs like you, I would have thought this was awful, I think, when I was 18. Just like where's all the nightlife? Where's the cultural stimulus, you know? Now I love it.
Yeah.
Did you love it from the beginning or
Well, okay, so I loved it before I lived here, but not in the way I love it now. So I think I loved it before I lived here for picturesqueness and for
it's
you
exotic?
know so when I was very, very young, I would go to Steamboat Springs, Colorado every year. I mean, this was a family trip, and we would go, and my family had a timeshare there that they owned. Yeah, they owned a timeshare with another close family, and so I was going there, and we were going there to ski. And if you've ever been to Steamboat Springs or any one of the Colorado mountains, you're going to get heavy doses of postcard views. It was very inspiring to me. It fueled some early music for me, some early composing. But since I lived here, just like you, the wide open quietude does not bother me the way maybe city life is bustling and you want to be there.
Mhm.
I forgot that you actually were from Chicago as well. That's really, really cool. There's a lot of similarities, but there's a peacefulness. And it's not that it's not that we're just like, oh, slowly, slowly venturing out to pasture. It's just that you actually have the time to spend a weekend not partying your ass off. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, just like enjoy where you are, the sky here in Colorado is ridiculously beautiful. It's the same in Wyoming. You get wide blue skies here. Quietude, that word, I'm falling in love sort of with it. Peace, and it sort of then becomes an inner peace. Contemplative, I don't know. I don't want to sound like a shaman or like
Oh,
a
come on, you teach in Boulder. You should sound like a shaman. Just if anyone
yeah.
can, you can.
And I should be a vegetarian or a vegan. I should be a this and that, and I'm not. So
No.
the wide open spaces, I love it. And you want to know something? When I go back to Chicago, which is not a lot, but when I do, boy, is it a trip. It's a thrill. And I mean like deep downtown Chicago in all the glass buildings, that Chicago style architecture of like absolute glass, curvy buildings, skyscraper.
Yeah.
That's a real trip. I appreciate it. I really do appreciate it more. What
Well,
about
listen,
you, Elizabeth? What is
yeah.
it? Yeah.
That's a good question. I think I related a little bit to your being inspired by young people. I am in a place in life where when my students can say or do something that is surprising, I kind of dig it in a way that I don't think I always have. And more as I age, I find it really inspiring when people are excited. I don't know if I care so much about what they're excited about, but the enthusiasm for me is big. And I guess on the heels of you talking about identity and art, I've really been enjoying that there are so many different identities that are now sort of passing through my periphery of awareness. And, maybe it's a privileged thing that I didn't encounter so many people who are so different from me in previous times or previous phases of my life. But, I was just digging into a piece by someone probably half my age who is non-binary and lives in a major metropolitan area and was sort of writing about some experiences they had due to those factors interrelating. And it's not a life I can imagine myself in. So it was kind of cool to put on their hat and be them for a few minutes. And
Yeah.
I kind of dig that.
Yeah, totally. That's cool. See, you're curious.
Armchair curious, maybe.
And a no, yeah. But you also understand the dynamic. I mean, that's not your experience. It's not, this is somebody different and you actually, either you, and you want to buy into it. And
Yeah. I mean, I think Nicole grew up outside of Chicago. I'm not sure where you were originally, but I think coming at classical music from the rural South, I've always had a dim awareness that I was not like everyone I was around. And so I think we all agree that it's kind of nice to see our field diversify. But for me personally, it's like, yes, like the minority that I'm in is now more similar in size to the minority as we start to like tack on everybody's individual differences from everybody else.
yeah.
I like,
Mhm.
the more different from one another we can all be, I think the happier I am from a curiosity standpoint, but also from a selfishness standpoint. I like not being the only odd one out anymore.
Oh, that's cool.
Well,
Yeah.
switching gears from the incredibly philosophical, Nicole invented a new question last season that I have stolen, I think, consistently every time we've interviewed someone. If you could manifest a dream collaboration or dream commission project, and they called you up tomorrow and said, hey, we want you to write this, do this, play this, what would it be?
Great question, Nicole. That's funny. It's a great question because if you any composer you interview will love this sort of final, big thought. I'll just preface it by in the 90s, I had an opportunity to write a lot of TV commercial music. And this was because I was bouncing in between being a graduate student and going back to Chicago. I was a graduate student in Michigan. That's not that far. So it was like a 3-4 hour drive from Ann Arbor to home outside of Chicago, kind of where same area as Nicole. Where was that, by the way?
Tinley Park, you were LaGrange, right?
Yeah, you're right, LaGrange. Yep.
LaGrange is where I rented my first flute in 5th grade. LaGrange music.
That's cool. To cut to it, I was going to say that I had that experience of writing commercial music. And when I mean commercial music, I mean, not just TV commercials, but radio ads, quick spots, logos, that kind of thing, musical logos. And and to get people in a studio singing, doing, like a little group of singers or instrumentalists, but mostly it was starting to really just turn into electronic production, that kind of thing. I really, really loved that work. And so when you say, what is a big, big dream commission or collaboration, I would love for a feature length film to fall into my lap. That really is a sort of fantasy project. The other side of that coin would be I absolutely love to perform with people who are just want to be there. So really, really want to be there. I'm not going to say, oh, I want to perform with only the best, yeah, groups in the world and the most professional musicians. No, I just want to be on stage with people who want to be there, and generally something really special and magical comes out, and that means I'm sitting at a piano generally. If it was a commission for me, obviously it'd be my music, and it would be a large work generally because I like to think big every now and then. And one of the movements would be Giantess for orchestra. How about that? One of the movements would be that piece orchestrated. If you can imagine that, that would be quite a challenge. Really, really cool puzzle. I mean, I think about that with other pieces too, but Giantess should be an orchestral work. So yeah, I love to perform at the keyboard with great people, and I would do something really tight. No, I mean really tight, like not some bloated, overexposed instrumentation, but just like a maybe some dance, or maybe turn it into a ballet, and it would be like a Haydn size orchestra, without even. I mean, it's a guarantee that there's gonna be some rock in it, some boomer grooves. I know it. I'm sorry, but it's just what it is.
Hashtag
Um,
boomer grooves.
Boomer grooves. Hey, that's not a
Love it.
bad title.
You've
I,
accidentally set us up because our last question is, what are three pieces of music you're listening to right now? Out yourself, Carter.
Oh, I need to tell you both about a new flute piece I just wrote. What I mean just wrote is about a year and a half ago. And then I'll tell you about these three pieces, okay, that I'm listening to.
Okay.
This new piece is called My Cross, flute and strings and harp and vibraphone solo. Like it's slow, it's slow. It's just the flute's only mandate is to just soar over the group, and the group is sort of playing sort of slowly, and there's no pyrotechnics or anything. I wanted to see if I could just write that tune that just takes me and just pulls me into it. And it's called My Cross. It's like a 9-minute exploration. I think it was written for Christina Jennings, and it was
Mm.
given as a at CU Boulder, and it was given as a gift to one of her department benefactor's husbands from his wife. There's a really interesting little. I mean, that's a little bit of random context. And there's a piano flute version. I am now shamelessly plugging this piece at two flute players. But so this is post Giantess, called My Cross, and the three pieces I am listening to. That's the question, right? I'm listening to a piece by a composer I would never, ever otherwise listen to, because I've always thought that his music, I mean, he recently passed away, but his music has been so thorny and such a thorn in my side. But then I found this one piece and I just can't stop listening to it. And I'm showing it to my students. It's a piece by Charles Warren, of all people. And it's called The Golden Dance. And it's a two movement work, large orchestra, and the last movement is it just bowls you over. It's so good. But again, it's kind of that it's like in a high art space, but it's a dance, and you don't hear a lot of that from that composer, Charles Warren, who died, I think, I don't know, I say recently, but it could be within the last 5 years. I'm listening to a lot of 50s rock, a lot of 1950s sort of teen idol rock, or some doo-wop a little later. And I just go through a phase like this, what I like to call big room crooner rock. That's like Bobby Darin, Sinatra, those kind of crooners. But that's the big stuff, and then the small stuff too, like the coasters, the like you know what I'm trying to say, like this 50s groove, this kind of
Yeah.
stuff. All the way to all the way to Chuck Berry, and then take it 15 years beyond. Okay, so here's the boomer in me. I am an absolute devotee of some artists from that I'm listening to all the time from the 70s, of just a few artists: Stevie Wonder, Steely Dan. I like a bit of early Michael Jackson. It's kind of like sleeper rock. I mean, if I say the words Gordon Lightfoot, that's like sleeper rock, or the Eagles. It's radio rock from when you know, Nicole, when you were like 5 years old in the back seat of the car going to the grocery store. This is what you would hear in the car.
Did you
Um,
know it's called yacht rock?
Yacht rock.
Christopher
Okay.
Cross also. I
Yeah.
just learned that term like a year ago. Yacht rock.
Yacht rock.
You're
That's
welcome.
kind of perfect. All right. I'm going to introduce that term to I know, my students in Bach counterpoint, because I sometimes shove those pieces down their ears, like some of these tunes, to show them what good melody, the anatomy of great melodies. I mean, of course, I use the dead stuff too, but like this stuff is just current enough that they've all. I played a piece I call it a piece. I played a song by Toto, not Africa, but I played Rosanna because I had to actually show them what accented passing tones sounded like. And I said, how many of you know this tune? Like the entire class, except for maybe two students. And these kids are all 22, 20 years old. I mean,
Nice.
that's incredible. But that's because you can find it. You don't have to buy it anymore. You just find it.
Yeah.
And so you get it all. But yeah, that's where I am. Steely Dan. It's hard for me to look away from those.
Well, Carter, this has been such an indulgent pleasure for me to get to go on this philosophical journey with you. I mean, this is not something you get to make time for in the middle of a week, and it's been extremely satisfying talking to you and catching
For
up.
me too, and I really, it's been such, I hope it hasn't been too much of a ramble, but I like talking to people I really like and respect. So I'm glad you guys are the ones I'm talking to. And also you make me really comfortable to sort of talk about anything. So thanks for that.
Well, thank you for joining us.
Definitely.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Music Crush. You can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can also support the podcast, read show notes, and learn more about FNMC by visiting www.flutenewmusicconsortium.com.